Tell me about the good old days. Sometimes it feels like this world's gone crazy. Grandpa, take me back to yesterday, when the line between right and wrong didn't seem so hazy. Did lovers really fall in love to stay and stand beside each other, come what may? Is promise really something people kept, not just something they would say? Families really bow their heads to pray. Daddies really never go away. Oh, oh, Grandpa, tell me about the good old days. Grandpa, everything is changing fast. We call it progress, but I just don't know. And Grandpa, let's wander back into the past, then paint me the picture of long ago. Lovers really fall in love to stay, stand beside each other, come what may. Is promise really so?
Hello, there you go. All right, we're gonna start the funeral shortly. So anyone in the back, or do I have to pull this forward? So we're gonna start the funeral shortly. So if anyone in the back, you can feel free, have a seat, and we'll start. All right. So if I have it like this, I don't know if you guys hear me. Should I hold it or? You're good? Awesome. All right. So, good morning, everyone. We're here today to honor and remember John Sawatzky, our friend, our dad, grandpa, my grandpa, and great-grandpa. My name is Brad Elias, John's grandson, and I'm really honored to spend this morning with you reflecting on his life, celebrating his life. And I understand also that our hearts are heavy. Prepping for this funeral was a challenging one. But we get to be here together, and being here together in the presence of Jesus is one of the most important part of grieving. And so today you're going to hear lots of stories about his life. I'm sure there will be many tears. Knowing my grandpa's life, I'm sure there will be a few laughs as well. He was a pretty amazing man. And we get to ultimately celebrate how he has impacted each one of us. And so I'm going to open with a word of prayer, and then my brother Chris will come and do the obituary, read the obituary. Jesus, thank you so much for this morning. Thank you that we have a full chapel here this morning of people that knew my grandpa John as a person that was generous, hardworking, that would never take no as an answer, would just be tenacious. And ultimately, there was a man of deep faith. And so, Lord, I pray that you would be near to each person in the room, that you would bring comfort, and would we be able to bring our hearts to you, and would you bring peace? And Jesus, I pray that ultimately would we be able to celebrate Grandpa and then look at what you did in his life and look to the cross. And so, Jesus, we welcome you here, and we thank you that you're going to walk with us through this funeral. Amen. Chris, you can. And then after Chris reads the obituary, then we'll have Becky and Steve to lead us in some songs.
Thanks for coming. I am, as Brad said, I'm his older brother. I guess I'd be the oldest grandson of John Sawatzky. So I'll read the obituary. John Sawatzky was born June 22nd, 1933 in Chihuahua, Mexico. He went to be with Jesus on July 14th, 2025. He was predeceased by his wife Helen. On January 30th, 2022, his parents, John and Susanna Sawatzky, 2 daughters, Verna Marlene in infancy, and our Auntie Shirley, January 18th, 2015. He is survived by 1 son and 4 daughters, Bruce and Darlene, Diana, Connie, Jake, Darlene and Troy, AJ, and Lawrence. 13 grandchildren and 16 great-grandchildren. John Sawatzky was born in Chihuahua, Mexico. His family moved back to Manitoba when he was about 3 years old. Dad had an incredible mind, and if you were to ask him where and when they came back, he could tell you the date, the day, and even the weather on that day. His memories contained so much detail. Dad was an amazing man when it came to conjuring up inventions in his head. He would wake up in the middle of the night with an idea of something he had been struggling to do or undo, and would have the details of a tool or some sort of answer to a problem in picture form in his mind. He would get up, write it down, and then in the morning he would get to it and create it. He built many number of things, from specialized tools to silly-looking ornamental steel creations to a snowplane to a tractor, his dear John. Dad had a very great love for his children. He was a busy grain and dairy farmer, but he loved to see his kids having fun when there was a moment in time for some well-deserved outing. These would include walks down at the river property at Minnedosa, golden eagle watching in the same area, bottle pickup in the ditches, wading in the water at a gravel pit, and hours of horseback riding or swimming in the river with the friends. We kids knew how to work hard, but we also knew how to play hard. Dad had the belief that hard work never hurt anyone, and if there was one thing that we as a family grew up learning, it was good, strong work ethic. If a job was worth doing, it was worth doing well, or you would likely get sent out to do it again. The family that worked together stayed together. More than anyone else in this world, Dad was utterly devoted to our mom. His deep love for her was evident in every interaction, and we, his children, knew we were to honor her as the queen she was. Their bond was truly special. They completed each other, and we always cherished seeing them walk hand in hand, a quiet display of their affection for each other. When Dad had a task to do, it was always all in. The family guardian angels needed to be prepared for another whirlwind performance. It is no lie that Dad had some pretty close calls while working. One that stands out to be remembered took place down by the river property along the edge of the gravel pit. It was a very windy day, and Dad was out making fence and pounding posts into the ground with a post pounder that was mounted on the back of an old Zed Minneapolis. This particular tractor had a narrow front end with the front wheels side by side. Dad would drive ahead a few feet and then pound the post, and he kept on repeating the process. Hold post, pound it in, move forward. He was holding the next post when he felt someone yank his shoulder. He looked around, thinking it was a neighbor, but there was no one there. He was about to drive ahead again when he really felt a tug on his shoulder. It was hard enough to cause him to step back. He looked up and around again. This time he noticed something that made his heart pound and blood almost turn cold. He was parked on the very edge of the gravel pit with one front wheel spinning in the air. Had he driven ahead one more post length, the whole thing would have gone crashing to the bottom of the pits, him along with it. God had protected him that time and many others. Dad could be a hard man, and in many ways it was a learned defense response to life. We will always remember the days when his first grandchild was born and how he changed from a hard cookie to a soft marshmallow. Oh, how he loved his grandchildren and then his great-grandchildren. If they hurt over life happenings, he would encourage them. He was always there to help and answer questions. It seems like a short time ago that the same little grandson that helped to open Grandpa's heart was also just about drove him crazy with questions. But why, Grandpa? Or how come, Grandpa? But Dad would patiently slow his step and answer his questions. These last few years, he absolutely loved to hear reports on all of the grandkids. He would ask about each one by name, and you could see in the depth of his eyes the love and the pride we had for them. He was also known as a scooter grandpa to the great-grandkids. When they came down, they were sure to receive a ride on his scooter down in the garage. Dad, we all love you dearly and could recall many, many more times of fun and learning that we each take away with us and apply to our own lives. Now you have gone ahead to see our Lord and Savior Jesus and be reunited with your lovely wife and daughters. Say hi to them, will you? We all love you and will miss you very much.
Sing some familiar songs. If you know the words, you can join us. Amazing Grace and Because He Lives.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found. Was blind, but now I see. Was grace that taught my heart to fear. can face tomorrow because he lives. All fear is gone because I know he holds the future and life is living just because he lives.
Life is worth living just because he lives.
Thank you.
So now we're going to have a few tributes from some grandkids. And so those who let me know that they would like to give a tribute, feel free to come up. And yeah, sure. Good morning. Hello. Of course, a lot of you know who I am, but if you don't, I am Steve, or if you go back, way back to childhood, I was Stephen. My grandpa's second oldest grandchild. After working with at-risk youth for over 15 years, and seeing the effects of broken families, I've come to realize more and more how blessed I have been to have my grandparents present in my life. And yes, Grandpa was present. My earliest memories of Grandpa are him chasing me around and around our dairy farmhouse, from the kitchen to the dining room, through the living room, and down the hallway. In my early years, it was special when Grandma and Grandpa would come over for the night or just for the day. You knew you would get some good food from Grandma because she was there to bake. And you would have a lot of fun listening to Grandpa's stories, roaming around the farm, and just knowing that Grandpa was there to give you his full attention. I just saw pictures of me sitting on him, and yes, he gave you his full attention. He was just there with you. Every summer, we would also go to Grandma and Grandpa's house for a few days. I still remember waking up to oatmeal and toast, and Grandpa always liked his toast a bit overdone. But that toaster they had that toaster for 30 years maybe, that same toaster. Grandpa also ate bread with butter with every meal, and I told my kids I inherited this from him. As they're laughing. I'll literally take a piece of bread and put butter on it, and just like Grandpa, fold it. And yeah, I remember watching him do that when I was a kid, and I still do that. To this day, I enjoy bread with everything, as Grandpa did. Then most times we would go outside after we'd eat breakfast and see what sort of project Grandpa was working on. Or sometimes go for a drive. I remember one time when they lived in Miami, he took me and my brother Chris to the top of the highest hill past Miami, and we rode as fast as we could on our bikes, and he was watching how fast we were going according to his truck. And we drove all the way back into Miami. Just stuff like that. We would go for drives. And then when we got a bit older, many hours of Dukes of Hazzard were watched. Other childhood memories include annual potato digging, saw a picture of that. Family gatherings, he especially loved giving out Kinder Surprises at Easter. Going to the winter fair, the Austin Threshermen's reunion, especially when he got that tractor built, the pride we had when he took it in that parade for the first time. Random auction sales, camping trips,
and listening to many stories. He was the best grandpa a kid could have asked for. As a teenager, I may have felt I didn't have as strong a connection with Grandpa as my brothers. While they were out chasing cows and building motorized bathtubs, I was banging on my drums and shooting hoops. But Grandpa never saw me differently. As long as his grandkids were working hard at something, it didn't matter what it was. I remember the day he came to me and said, "You had quite a beat going there." As an adult, he became one of my biggest supporters and cheerleaders. At age 24, when I started my career at the Dropzone Youth Ministry, Grandpa pulled me aside and said this with tears in his eyes. He said, "After we almost thought we lost you from your pneumonia as a baby, he said, I always knew you would do something great and help a lot of people." He took so much interest in how the ministry was going and wanted to know how he could help all the time. He donated a drill. We still have it, a DeWalt drill. So we use it in memory of him. In my last conversation with him at the hospital, I had reminded him of some of the changes that had happened. I had visited AJ and Lawrence in August, and I just told him that I'd be making some changes for my job, and he was disappointed to hear that. But 6 months later, at the hospital, in my last conversation with him, I told him about my changes in my life and that I had started to work for Teen Challenge. As best he could, he smiled and told me everything will work out. Grandpa, thank you for caring and supporting us as your grandkids, and thank you for loving your great-grandchildren, our children. See you in heaven, Grandpa.
I am going to read a tribute here on behalf of Sarah, who was not able to be here. She asked if I could share this with everyone. Good morning, everyone. Thank you for being here today to honor and remember my grandfather, John Sawatzky, or as I've always known him, Grandpa. It's hard to put into words what he meant to me and to all of us. He was a good man, a hardworking, dependable, deeply loving man who always put his family first. He was the kind of man you could count on, no matter what. The kind of man who showed up again and again and never asked for praise. Grandpa was the core of my childhood. So many of my best memories are wrapped up in time spent with him. I remember going to the dump with him, how we'd hit the train tracks in that old Chevy truck, and he'd throw his arm across our laps just as we caught a little air. We'd be laughing, flying, and safe all at once. That was Grandpa. Adventurous, fun, and always protective. He was a jokester too. I don't think any of us will forget his ongoing jokes about Grandma's desserts, how they were full of mice or potato bugs. Somehow he made even that sound delicious, or at least hilarious. One of the most meaningful things I witnessed was how Grandpa stepped up for Daniel. When Daniel didn't have a father in his life, Grandpa became one for him. He didn't just help raise Daniel, he poured his heart into it. I'll never forget watching the two of them compete over who could eat more corn on the cob or watermelon. Their bond was something truly special. We learned so much from him. I learned how to drive tractors and go-karts because of Grandpa. Daniel was always at his side, his little shadow in the shop, learning and absorbing everything Grandpa did. He was a role model in every sense of the word. Even our animals adored him. Our dog Sandy thought the world of Grandpa. He taught her to chase squirrels and magpies, and they were like two best friends out on adventures together. And I'll never forget my favorite cat, Zorro, who came from the farm, another reminder of the life and love that surrounded Grandpa. One of my favorite stories that gets told over and over is when I was just a baby and Grandpa was left to babysit me. Let's just say I got into everything. I wasn't much of a walker at that age, but I could climb, and I did. He probably never got a moment's peace that day, but that's who he was, patient, loving, and full of laughter, even in the chaos. There's a picture I love, a moment frozen in time. It's me as a baby, fast asleep on Grandpa's chest. It was the only place I'd nap. That image says it all about our bond. It was strong, unshakable, and full of love. I spent so many summers at the farm with my family, with him, and today I can say with my whole heart, he wasn't just my grandfather. He was like a father to me, a guide, a protector, a friend. Grandpa, I will miss your voice, your laugh, your stories, and your hugs. I'll miss the way you made everything feel okay just by being there. You gave me strength without even knowing it. You gave me memories that will stay with me forever. I hope you know how deeply you are loved and how much of you lives on in me, in Daniel, Heather, and Mom, and in everyone you touched. Goodbye, Grandpa. I love you so much. Rest easy. You've earned it. Love, Sarah.
I have a couple of tributes to share. One from Heather, that's Sarah's sister. I have so many great memories, it is hard to choose which one to talk about. One of my favorite memories of him were all the tractor rides he gave myself and all the grandkids. It didn't matter where he was living, in town or in the country, he had a tractor and rides were given. His neighbors also knew about him. John was a farmer, and I have always been proud to say my grandpa was a farmer. It meant that he was strong, hardworking, and could fix anything, and a part of something bigger than himself. His tractor rides came full circle for me when he offered to give my son, his great-grandson, a tractor ride on his walker. For me, that was his last effort to still giving tractor rides in his best way he knew how. He'll be forever missed, and in our hearts, riding his dear John tractor. And also, I'm going to see if this works, but Daniel has asked for me to call him, and we'll see. That's Heather and Sarah's brother, and we'll see if he's able to give a tribute through the phone. See if it works. Hey, Daniel. There we go. I'm going to put you on the mic now. You're on mic.
Can everyone hear me?
Yep.
Well, I'm Daniel, a Sarah and Heather's brother, and a cousin to the speakers so far. A few days ago, as many of you know, I lost my dad. I was 9 when my parents divorced, and he's a really sad little boy that was really lost. And he taught me everything. Right now I'm speaking from my 60-foot sailing vessel on the southern BC coast. I'm a mobile diesel mechanic, marine electrician, scuba diver, all sorts of things, but I run handy-down services. I went back for John's 90th birthday because I wanted to show him what that little boy turned into. So I arrived before the entire family, just because I knew it'd be the last time I see him. was a man of absolute integrity, and whatever he spent time on, he did it extremely well. He told me as a young kid, if you're not going to do something to the best of your ability, don't even wake up. Because there's no point. Always do better. And he said, as much of a genius as you are, Daniel, never become a bad student and always be easily taught. I feel like I live my life by the words of wisdom that he instilled into that young boy. And he taught me what a real man was like, unlike my childish father. He showed me who to, what kind of man to become, and I owe everything to him. There's so many memories. I spent every summer with him from 9 to 15 years old. And if I wanted to do something or build something, I came to Grandpa because we would go through the scrapyard. He knew exactly where that piece of metal was, and then we would make something just with welded together scrap metal, and it would never break. He had many wise words of wisdom. Like, there's endless quotes that he told me growing up. And, like, for example, back to the toaster, he told me, no one likes anything that breaks, so find the oldest version you can. And if you can't find an old version that suits your needs, build it yourself and over-engineer it tenfold. And if you have to absolutely buy something new, well, try to make it yourself again. Because new things are garbage. That's what he always told me. I'm still wearing a 1972 seat belt from a Chevy truck because I told him, I said, Grandpa, I want a new belt. So he took me to the scrapyard. We paid $5 for it, and I've been wearing it since I was 13. I'm now 30. I also, when I was 18, went to a thrift store, and I found the oldest toaster I could. And it's probably one of my best quality items. There's so many things I could say. But he was a man of absolute wisdom. I mean, can you name anyone else that bought full sets of World Book Encyclopedia and read them cover to cover? Because he did that, and the public school didn't even have encyclopedias, and he gifted them to the school after he was done reading them all. You asked that man about any little detail, any bit of knowledge, and he knew something about it. He knew the year the abacus was made in China. But he he's a bit of a legend. I don't know anyone smarter, really. I don't know anyone more capable than my grandfather. And I'll forever miss him. I wear his pie clip on my hat every day. He imprinted on many people's lives, and I don't think any of us would be where we are today without him. The past few days I've been working like a madman on diesel engines and sailboats and powerboats, trying to distract myself, but of course I worked, like, he taught me how to rebuild engines and do pistons and rings and whatnot and machine. And of course yesterday I worked on 3 different engines that he taught me how to work on. I came back for his 90th birthday and I said, I'm just working on floating tractors, Grandpa. Sailboats and powerboats they're all tractor powered. And the unbelievable amount of tricks he taught me with mechanical things, like the look on people's faces when I'm fixing their $2 million boat, but I'm tasting their engine oil to see if there's any coolant in there or glycol. Or I stick my finger in spark plug boots and shock myself to understand if the ignition system is good or not on engines constantly. But they don't teach you those tricks. He taught me an unbelievable amount of knowledge when it comes to life and mechanics, and I'll be forever grateful. The world really lost a good one. They don't make him like they used to. So I think I'd like to just end off by saying onwards and upwards, move forward and do better. And yeah, I would just like to thank everyone for being there today. I wish I could have been there. I felt like I knew John almost better than any other family member in certain ways. I was his shadow. And I didn't just lose my grandfather, I lost the man who made me who I am. But I'm so glad he's out of pain. I don't know too many other people that are still walking after breaking their spine. He broke his spine. I've broken mine twice. And I feel like there's a reason he taught me so many lessons. Because he, just like Steve was saying, he knew we would do great things. And we wouldn't be doing him justice if we didn't do our best. Because there's no point in getting up if you're not going to do the best you can. So do it well. Yeah, I just want to thank everyone for allowing me to speak. And I'll hand off the mic to someone else.
Thanks, Daniel. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
All right, that was awesome. I think there was a couple more that I think Chris and Cindy also wanted to share as well.
Hello, my name is Cindy. I'm Chris and Steve and Brad's sister and Grandpa's granddaughter. When I think of Grandpa, the first thing that comes to mind is tractors, like so many other people. I loved riding on Grandpa's tractors, and eventually I loved driving them myself at their place in Kalida. Thanks to Grandpa's influence, there was a time when I was a kid that I was very determined that my first vehicle I bought would be a tractor. That did not happen, but it's fine. Some other memories of Grandpa include bumpity bump bump over and over again on that squeaky brown rocking chair, the feeling of warmth by the pellet stove in Grandma and Grandpa's home, chocolate bunnies or Kinder eggs at Easter, and thoughtful gifts at Christmas. Grandpa knew how to make us feel loved and right at home. I thoroughly enjoyed our drives through the Pembina Valley with Grandpa as well. I loved his sense of adventure and playfulness. He made us feel seen and valued. I also loved the way he enjoyed the time he had with his great-grandkids. Some special memories for us were a picnic in the Morden Park, scooter rides in the garage beneath his condo, the way he'd pat your leg if you were sitting beside him, and always a hug and many stories to listen to. His love for Grandma was also so evident, even when we were kids. It always stood out to me and still stands out as a part of who he was. There's so much more to say. His love for the Lord, which he became more open about later in life, his generosity, his hugs and I love yous, all with a very genuine heart. He truly was a treasure of a man. Thank you.
On one hand, I feel like I don't have much to add because everything said is 100% true, but at the same time, Grandpa said so many stories and did so many things that we probably all have many things to add. So I'll share what I wrote down here. As I was thinking about how to pay tribute to Grandpa, a lot of memories came to mind. It's hard to settle on only a few, but I settle on the ones that impact me the most in the way that I live, think, and act today. So I'll kind of just go through a list of different things that came to my mind. First is I'd call it a passion. Some might call it an addiction, but I'm certain that my love for cows and farming comes from the many hours riding on the tractor, feeding animals, and driving to the Brandon Auction Mart, being sure not to hit our heads as we drove under overpasses or bridges, and many other farm-related tasks with Grandpa. Almost every time until he wasn't able, our conversations revolved around farming. Even in the last year, he told me that if he was well, he'd come give me a hand with the cows and things that we have at home. Another thing was being a good neighbor, and having good neighbors is worth a lot. I remember numerous stories, or maybe the same story numerous times, about Barry Radford, Ross Foster, Pete Harder, who I met here today for the first time, and others helping out after Grandpa's accident or a snowstorm, and he did the same for many of his neighbors. That's something I try to model. This one might sound odd, but it's true. Don't believe Mary Poppins. And you could argue this for many reasons, but the song actually goes, zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay, my oh my, what a wonderful day. Plenty of sunshine, plenty of hay, zippity-doo-dah, zippity-yay. That was our anthem as we fed the cows hay in the morning on the tractor. Patience is definitely a virtue. If the amount of questions I asked a kid is actually true, I'd probably go back in time and tell myself to be quiet. But Grandpa never did. He told plenty of stories where he maybe wasn't the most patient, but with us grandkids, he always had tons of patience. It's definitely something I can grow in. This was also evident in the amount of time he spent with us. Even if he had lots of other stuff to do or projects on the go, we were somehow involved and he just brought us along. Appreciate the simple things in life. I remember Grandpa and Grandpa doing quite a bit of traveling after they left the farm. But it's always a road trip with a camper, nothing too fancy, and occasionally we were fortunate enough to go with, either to Riding Mountain or Austin Thresherman's reunion, Brandon Winter Fair, Peace Gardens. It was never fancy, but we always had a blast. And thinking back, I'm not sure if it was harder for us to keep up with Grandpa or harder for him to keep up with us. The Loon Island Trail saw us multiple times. That was just trail in Riding Mountain that we went to, and I think we camped at Moon Lake and did this trail. I don't know, I remember it quite clearly several times. Another thing that was mentioned is work hard. Not much to add, but it's something Grandpa modeled until he couldn't. For a guy with a crushed spine, it's amazing what he got done. Spend time with the ones you care about. Grandpa worked hard, but we also had the privilege of spending lots of time together. It was partly because we lived on the same yard for a while when I was much younger. And truthfully, I think I have more memories of Grandma and Grandpa's place or in the barn than I do in the own house that I lived in. Even when we moved further apart, Grandpa still made an effort to spend time with us, or we went over there for sleepovers. It was still clearly a priority. Another one was don't harbor bitterness and resentment. Grandpa was a really good storyteller, and we'd hear stories about different business dealings where something seemed unfair, and the emotion of the story seemed as raw and real as if it was still in the moment, often with the desire to show them or teach them a lesson. I don't remember it ever bothering me. That's just the way Grandpa shared stories. But in the last number of years, something changed. I'm not sure exactly why or how, but I'm sure Jesus was a part of it, and Grandpa seemed more at peace with life. I feel like there's more that could be said, but I'll leave it there. We were very privileged to have a grandpa as involved in our lives as he was. We'll miss him, but I know that we can look forward to seeing him again, and the farming community in heaven better make way.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for coming. I'm the father to some of the children that just spoke. And I think they've almost said everything, although just thinking about it, in about 3 weeks, my wife Connie and I, we will be celebrating 44 years. So I've seen a bit more of life with Dad, Grandpa, grandfather-in-law than they have, obviously. So I may be able to add a few things, and not very much so. But when I think of, or as I've reflected this past week just on Dad and his life, I don't know. I don't think, there definitely isn't one word to describe it all. Some of the words that came to mind were tenacity. I think that word's already been mentioned. Extraordinary, and today I was just thinking, who even lives life like that anymore? Like, with such diversity, life was meant to be celebrated, and I just, some things that come to mind. I know I think it was mentioned, he was born in Chihuahua, Mexico. So he didn't actually have an official Canadian citizenship certificate. And I'm not sure how many years ago, but it was a huge celebration. He dressed up for the occasion, and he actually officially got his Canadian citizenship certificate, something that was meant to be celebrated. And just his demonstrating a life of selflessness, just being willing to put others before himself, which I experienced personally many times. And just, one of the things I think of, just how he recognized, I think over time, he recognized God seriously had a purpose for his life. And, one of the things that demonstrated that was what Chris read, I believe, in the obituary, where this incident where he almost drove off into the edge of the gravel pit, of all things, and how obviously somebody was trying to get his attention. I remember the story a little bit differently, so I'll just say what I remember. I remember him telling me that he was actually driving, and he had his head, it was windy and it was a cold day, so he had his parka on, his hood up, and so he had his face away from the wind. And so he wasn't looking forward. So he felt the jerk on his shoulder one time. Second time, so the jerk on the shoulder was enough, he actually had to pull the hand clutch and stop the tractor. And that's when he looked forward and he saw that wheel spinning in the air right on the edge of the gravel pit. So that's my version of it. The truth is in the middle somewhere. So anyway, just thought I'd share that. So, the point is, that experience just made him realize, you know what, God's not finished with me. There's other things for him to do, and he did many. And his life went on. So we were both, him and I, we were both very much interested in farming, and we loved dairy farming. And so we had those things in common. And so because he came from a dairy farming background, we naturally, did things together. And eventually we lived next door to their house. And it was a little place called Keys, so a little bit, there's multiple houses, I think a total of 4, very big place. And anyway, so we lived next door, and I'm working in construction or whatever I was doing. And often on weekends, Dad and I, we would be doing chores together. One of the things we often do was tub grinding. So for those of you that are farmers, you will understand. A tub grinder is where you put big round bales that you see in the field, you put them inside the tub, and they get crushed up, and the conveyor takes the feed into a pile. So, December the 5th, 1987, I will never forget that day. He was outside and putting bales in the tub. As it's turning, I'm inside the pole shed, forking the hay around so it didn't pile up against the conveyor. And so we're working away, and all of a sudden I noticed the whole machine pushed forward against this corner of the pole building. It was a pole building. And I thought, oh no, something happened. So I raced outside, and I find my father-in-law laying on the ground. Thankfully, he was able to shut the tractor off before he fell. But what happened, round bale came over top of the loader, and it was an open tractor, and he saw it coming, and he leaned forward, landed on his back. So there he is, laying on the ground. And of course, first thing, called the ambulance, get him to the hospital. Miraculously, he survived, even though his back was crushed, his kidneys were crushed, and so for the next few months, things got very busy because, we're living next door, thankfully, so we were able to help out with the farm. So between Connie and I and mother-in-law and probably Bruce and AJ and others, we kept the farm going. And I remember early January, following year, about a month later, he called me to say he wanted to see me after I was done work to come visit him in the hospital. And he said, I'd like you to take over the farm. And I said, I'm not really in a position to take over the farm. Well, you know what? Let's just, I'll put some of my equity against it to make it work. He just, because it was so important for him that somebody in the family, and he said, you're the only one that's really interested in dairy farming, so would you consider it? And I said, Dad, just sell it and take your money. It's no hard feelings. No, but I really want the farm in the family. And so I said, if you're really serious, then we'll look into that. I'm not wanting to take advantage of you, obviously. And that was one example of him putting others before himself. And we had the privilege of running the farm for the next 8 years or so. And we enjoyed it a lot. It wasn't easy, for sure not, but we made it work. And that was just one of those examples. And again, God spared his life, and he recovered, and he kept on going, and his tenacious side just kept on coming out, and he kept on building things and being creative. A few people have mentioned, his treasures that he found in different places. And I remember there was a place in northern Saskatchewan. He found, it was on one of many, him and Mom's excursions, and they would just go for drives and find things. And he had a way of spotting these things. And so up in Saskatchewan, somewhere on a road allowance, there's apparently some old tractors and things people can help themselves to. And some of these things came home, and I'm sure some of the parts he found there are in that green tractor he built. So, yeah, that's just, oh yeah, so as I also mentioned, so as he got older, and like was mentioned, the grandkids came, and he became much more open about his faith and the importance, and he would talk to grandchildren, us, about, where we were at within our relationship with God. And one day, We were living in Steinbeck at the time. And he pulled me aside and he said, I want to tell you something. I haven't told anybody. And it just shows, it showed his heart, his true heart. He said, years ago, when him and Mom got married, they had just got married and moved off the farm. And I think he was working maybe in Winnipeg at the time in construction. And his dad got cancer. And so he couldn't run his own farm anymore. So him and Mom moved to the farm to help out Mom and his parents to run the farm. And he said the reason I did that, one of the reasons he did that, because he knew his dad didn't know Jesus. And he said it was my concern that he would become a Christian. And he said while we were working on the farm, I had the privilege of leading him to Christ. And I know Dad was a private man and he didn't easily tell stories like that. I know at the time he told me not to tell anybody. But I know if he was here today, he would be glad to share that story. So I'm just sharing it on his behalf. And the reason I'm sharing it is just because it shows his heart. And he would probably want that I know he would want that for everyone here. So I could probably go on for hours, but I won't. But thank you.
The one thing Dad was always had his eye open for was the next pile of junk. Somewhere, wherever he was traveling, he always had his eye open. And I guess it kind of rubbed off. I'm kind of the same way. I was asked to share something about a childhood memory. And there are lots of them. But there is one that stands out that I will never forget. I don't think I was 10 years old yet. I might have been, but I don't think so. And we had moved from Boisvane to Minnedosa. And so 2 older sisters and myself and 1 younger. And we didn't have a lot of choices for bicycles back then. We had 1 big old bike. It was way too tall for any of us. And when we rode that bike, we had to ride it underbar. Do you guys know what that is? You gotta stick your leg through the bar, and that's how you ride it. You're not tall enough to get your leg on top. So we rode, all of us, we rode that silly bike, and we rode it underbar. Dad finally saw the need for bicycles. And so he came up with the idea he would buy 1 brand new bike a year. And well, I kind of thought, wow, this is going to take some time to get a bike. And he was true to his word. He did that. That summer he bought 1 brand new bike for one of my sisters, whoever won, probably Shirley, I guess. And then the second year, he did it again, a brand new bike, another girl's bike. Okay, I guess I'm in line for the next one. And so then the third one came along, and he was true to his word. He never forgot. And the next year, the third time, he brought home another brand new bike, but it was another girl's bike. And I can just remember I was hurt. I was just destroyed. Like these girls' bikes, and what about me? and I guess Mom and Dad saw that I was just very, very distraught, very, very just plain hurt. And so they wanted to know why, and I said, they're always girls' bikes. And you know what my dad did? He just jumped in the truck and he went straight back to town. Like a new bike back then, I forget what they paid. Was it $100? wasn't that much, $50 maybe, for a brand new bike. And money wasn't really growing on trees, but he went straight back to town and he picked up a boy's bike that same afternoon and brought it home. And I remember I was just ecstatic. It was beautiful, beautiful bike, but it was a boy's bike. And that is probably the most special memory that I have from being just a kid. So, thanks.
I don't think this thing's working, but that's okay. Is it working now? Oh, I don't know how it got turned off, but it did somewhere in there. Okay, well, thanks everyone for sharing. That was really special because we all hit on a lot of the same stories, but there's probably 100 more because he was such an adventurer and so creative, and it was incredible. And yeah, my grandpa was an incredible man, and I have so many memories of him. About 8 months ago, maybe 9 months ago, when Grandpa first got into the hospital, he knew that his time was coming close to an end. We thought 9 months ago it was going to be within a month, but it ended up being 9. And Grandpa asked me if I'd be willing to do the devotional at his funeral. And so here I am. I hope to honor him and to celebrate him, but also there's so much family here. I hope to encourage each one of you. And as I was praying for this, I hope that each one of us at the end can look at the cross and look at Grandpa's faith. And so today's devotional won't be your typical message. It's not going to be a theological sermon or nothing like that. It's going to be a mixture of a tribute of my grandpa, some stories of how he lived his life, and then a little reflection, basically how I've reflected as I've thought about his death in the last 4 or 5 days. And so we all have so many memories of him. Someone mentioned that I'll never forget, one of my earliest memories is being bounced in his lap with the zippity-doo-dah. And funny thing about that story is when I was later learning piano, I was so excited I found zippity-doo-dah in the piano book. And then I looked at the words and I was like, these are wrong. I had no idea that it was an actual song. I had the opportunity 2 years in a row to spend a week with Grandpa at the Austin Threshermen's reunion, to listening to countless stories of treasure hunts that I dreamt that I could go on with him one day. I wanted so badly to go to the junk piles that he talked about. And so, another thing, as I've been reflecting on his death, I've been thinking a lot about heaven and thinking a lot about Grandpa meeting Grandma for the first time and being reunited. That couple, they were two peas in a pod. You never saw them apart. What Grandpa was doing, whether he was climbing a tree 30, 40 feet up when Grandma was holding the ladder, or whatever Grandpa was doing that was rather insane, Grandma was there scolding him. But their love for each other was so amazing, and they were just together all the time, right? So I wonder when he got into heaven, I wonder if he looked at her and called her Mama, even now. I don't know if he ever used her name. It's always Mama. I wonder what crazy adventures that he has dragged her on already this week. And then I think of Grandpa seeing Jesus for the first time. I bet that meeting was really, really special. Because Grandpa has lots of stories of Jesus speaking to him. I don't know, he shared a few with me, and I've heard some from my dad where God would warn him in a dream, or I don't know if this story is, but even back in Kalida, he had a dream, and that's when his heart started to shift even more. God would speak. And I bet that first meeting was really, really, really special. I bet they joked about the many times that Jesus had to send a few extra angels to keep Grandpa back on earth. I bet they talked about, and I hope I got the story right, I think it was when 21 when he became a Christian. At least that's what I remember him telling me, when he was listening to a Billy Graham crusade. And he gave his life to Jesus. I bet they're going to talk about, and Jesus is going to encourage him for the amount of times that Grandpa went out of his way to pay for a lot of our different things. He was a very generous man. And whatever his family needed, he would provide as much as he could. And supported our many, many endeavors. But I've also thought about another conversation that Grandpa's probably going to have with Jesus. And this conversation is probably, Jesus is going to bring up some of the failures, some of the times that Grandpa got angry or didn't respond well. And knowing my grandpa, I bet I know what his response was. Probably sadness, regret, and the desire to go back and make some things right. You see, Grandpa was on a lifelong pursuit, a journey towards Jesus. And honestly, Grandpa wasn't your typical Christian in the way that a lot of like to describe it. He wasn't talking about his regular church attendance or his Bible studies with friends. Although he did watch TV and watch church on TV. He didn't always look like the typical Christian. But something that I know about Grandpa is he had a deep faith, and we often talked about it. Maybe because I was a pastor, I'm not sure. You could see it the way that he honored Grandma. There was always a twinkle in Grandpa's eye when he saw Grandma. Always. He treated her like royalty. There are many stories of, once again, I'm repeating myself, where God spoke through a sermon or dream. Or that time where Grandpa impacted me deeply when I was a 7-year-old kid who was being bullied at school. And Grandpa took me to the Austin Thresher Women's Union for a week, and he reminded me that I belonged. By the time he built the go-kart or motorized bathtub for me, which is the most hilarious thing, all to make his grandkids' day. There are dozens of stories like this, and Grandpa's faith wasn't explained by many words, but through many actions. And so why do I share this? One, to honor my grandpa. But also, I share this because we also have the opportunity to go to God with our life, with our pain and our heart and our hurt. Each of us has the opportunity to start a relationship with God. But the thing is, not all of us start at the same place. Some, like myself, had the opportunity to start my relationship with God in a very loving family, and I got to know about Jesus at a very young age. Others grew up in the more tougher situations, and their journey with Jesus starts a little bit more difficultly. But each of us will have different journeys towards Jesus, but the important thing is we have to ask our question, where are our feet pointed? Grandpa's feet were pointed towards Jesus, and you could see over his life there was a softening. Not perfection, but a softening, and his feet were walking towards Jesus. When my grandpa